Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Torah in 10, your weekly dose of Torah in context in 10 minutes or less. This week, we're going to be covering Parasha Shelach, numbers 13:1 to 15:41. I'm Hernan Cortez II. Let's get started. Portion recap. Shelach is about a test too far. This portion picks up with Hashem speaking to Moses and instructing him to gather 12 spies who will travel through the land of Canaan, spying out the inhabitants and the condition of the land for the children of Israel. The fact that Moses gathered the heads of each tribe, who were then specifically named, which again translates to a sign of honor and distinguished status in ancient Near Eastern culture, to enter the land shows that the report of these leaders are held in extremely high regard by the rest of the children of Israel. In many lessons about this particular portion, we fail to acknowledge that these selected men hold much power and influence within their tribes, so much so as to be hand-chosen by Moses himself. As Moses lays out the mission to the spies, we get a hint at the time of year that this event takes place in. Numbers 13:20, how is the land? Is it fat or lean? Are there trees in it or not? Make an effort then to get some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. We see the ripening of the grapes, which tells us that all this took place in the month of Tammuz, going into the month of Av. As the spies continue to travel through the land, we see that they cut some of the grapes along with harvesting other fruits of the land. And when they return, they recount their experiences, seeing the different tribes and the descendants of Anak. Several important tribes are mentioned, such as the Hittites, Amalekites, Jebusites, Amorites, and Canaanites. Before the bad report is given, it's important to remember that Caleb steps forward to support the conquests and trusts in the power of Hashem. After a bad report is given to the people, they begin to weep and to mourn. They start to plot against Moses and Aaron and even conspire to appoint new leaders to abandon their journey and return to Egypt. At this point, both Caleb and Joshua tear their clothes in a sign of mourning and plead with the people to reconsider. Moses then has to intercede on behalf of the people, and we see yet another example of not only Moses' humility, but also his ability to speak with and entreat kings with the proper language and protocol. Undoubtedly, this is one of the reasons why he was raised in the house of Pharaoh, to understand the proper protocol to speak with a king and present a supplication of mercy, not because the people are deserving of it, but for the honor and integrity of God. And this is seen clearly in Numbers 14, verse 13 through 19. But Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear of it, for by your strength you brought up this people from their midst, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people. For you, O Lord, are seen eye to eye, while your cloud stands over them. And you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and in a pillar of fire by night. Now if you slay this people as one man, then the nations who have heard of your fame will say, because the Lord could not bring this people into the land which he promised them by oath, therefore he slaughtered them in the wilderness. But now, I pray, let the power of the Lord be great, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children of the third and fourth generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people, according to the greatness of your loving kindness, just as you have also forgiven this people from Egypt even until now. We see the cloud yet again mentioned within this conversation with Hashem, emphasizing the importance of the imagery that this concept conveys. Once Moses has interceded for the people, and God has decided against destroying them all, and instead they will wander the wilderness until they perish, and their children will be the ones to possess the land of Canaan, only Caleb and Joshua are exempt from this punishment, making them the only people to have seen the entire journey from Egypt all the way until the entering and the conquer of the land, as we do see in the book of Joshua. Upon hearing this terrible news, the children of Israel attempt to take the land by force, without the support of Hashem, Moses, or even the Ark of the Covenant, and they're swiftly defeated and pushed back out by the Amalekites. Chapter 15 begins a shift in the tone of the book, with God speaking to Moses about the type of offerings that are to be brought when they do enter the land, what elements are needed, and in what quantities are specified. It is at this point that we see that God shows no partiality between the native-born and the sojourner in matters of the law. This is clearly stated not only in verse 15 through 16, as for the assembly, there shall be one statute for you and for the alien who sojourns with you, a perpetual statute throughout your generations. As you are, so shall the alien be before the Lord. There is to be one law and one ordinance for you and for the alien who sojourns among you. We also see this in verse 29 as well. You shall have one law for him who does anything unintentional, for him who is native among the sons of Israel, and for the alien who sojourns among them. But also in Leviticus 24:22, there shall be one standard for you. It shall be for the stranger as well as the native, for I am the Lord your God. The repeating of this specific concept is significant and applicable even today. While most of the chapter is devoted to how someone can be reconciled for sins that were unintentional, we see a break in that with the incident of the man breaking Sabbath. Bear in mind that the Sabbath has been mentioned previously back in Exodus chapter 16, verse 22 through 30. Now on the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. When all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, then he said to them, This is what the Lord meant. Tomorrow is a Sabbath observance, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over put aside and be kept until morning. So they put it aside until morning, as Moses had ordered. And it did not become foul, nor was there any worm in it. Moses said, Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. It came about on the seventh day that some of the people went out to gather, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? See, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you bread for 2 days on the sixth day. Remain every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. So there is no ignorance on this particular matter. Knowing this transforms this particular issue from what can be misconstrued as unintentional into a clear case of a rebellious act against both God and the Sabbath. Now the punishment of stoning becomes more clear. And a solid breakdown of this type of punishment for this sort of rebellion can be found in the Zondervan Illustrated Commentary. The raised right hand with the outstretched arm was a common symbol of strength and power in ancient Near Eastern literature and iconography. The sinner with a high hand feels no guilt, thus the offense is not sacrificially expiable. Such a defiant person must suffer the ultimate judgment, the cutting off, karet, reserved for the most heinous and sacrilegious offenses. Jacob Milgram delineates 5 categories of infractions in which the karet was meted. Number 1, violation of sacred time, as in the neglect of holy days. Number 2, violation of sacred substances, such as the consumption of blood. Number 3, neglect of purification rituals, such as circumcision. Number 4, illicit worship, such as idolatry or sorcery. And number 5, illicit sexual activity, such as incest or bestiality. Finally, the portion concludes with the commandments regarding the wearing of tassels with a blue cord. Again, turning to the Zondervan commentary, we get some much-needed context for the importance of the tassels or the tzitzits and their symbolism. In the ancient Near East, special garments were made for priests and royalty that identified them within their communities and to the outside world. Several examples of garments with corded fringes come from the statue of Puzur-Ishtar, governor of Mari, in the Ur-III period, from Asiatics depicted in the Beni Hassan tomb of the Egyptian Khnumhotep II in the 19th century BC, and later the Neo-Syrian murals. With these commandments and the comment made from Moses in the previous portion, being Numbers chapter 11, verse 28 to 30, then Joshua the son of Nun, the attendant of Moses from his youth, said, Moses, my Lord, restrain them. But Moses said to him, Are you jealous for my sake? Well, that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his spirit upon them. Then Moses returned to the camp, both he and the elders of Israel. We get a clearer understanding at what the original intent of Israel was meant to be, a holy nation of honorable priests and prophets. Within the events of Shelach, 12 spies are sent into Canaan to scout out the land. Grapes, figs, and pomegranates are gathered as proof of the land's bounty. After Caleb attempts to encourage the spies, a bad report is given to the children of Israel. The people wept and began to plot against Moses and Aaron. Joshua and Caleb attempt to dissuade them from rebellion. Moses has to intercede and prevent God from wiping out the children of Israel. Moses is successful, however, God does not allow this current generation to enter the land, and they must now wander the wilderness for 40 more years. That is, 1 year per day the spies were in the land. Commandments regarding meal, wine, and oil offerings are given upon entering the land. A rebellious man is put to death for breaking the Sabbath. The commandment of the tzitzits are given to further set Israel apart from the nations and as a reminder of obedience to the commandments. Did you know? The day of the bad report from the 12 spies, the ninth of Av, has become synonymous with other catastrophic events in Jewish history. Some of these events include the destruction of the first and second temple. The way of the Red Sea, mentioned in chapter 14, verse 25 of this portion, actually refers to a well-known trade route within the region. Question time. Where have we seen the Nephilim mentioned previously in the Torah? How many years, according to this week's portion, was Hebron built before Zoan? And how many times does God mention that the children of Israel have tested him up to this point? Happy studying, and Shabbat Shalom.